So now I don't have to go and find those deals. I don't have to evaluate 100 deals to make an offer on 10 to maybe get one. I need to find those people that already found that one. And now I only have to underwrite that one.
Welcome to Multifamily Insights. I'm your host, John Kasman, and I want to thank you for joining us for another great episode. If you're enjoying the show, do me one quick favor and leave us a rating and review. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you love about the show, but we'll also take any honest feedback about anything we can do to make the show work harder for your investing goals. And if you haven't done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. We've got a great show today. We've got a returning guest, Mr. Jeff Greenberg. They say you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you want to grow as a multifamily investor, you have to spend more time with other multifamily investors. And an easy way to do that is to join our apartment investing mastermind group today. Just go to casmancapital.com and click on the mastermind button. Now, as a part of this group, you'll get access to expert trainings, group coaching calls, industry news and updates, as well as all of our webinars and workshops, including our 3-hour workshop on raising capital. Again, if you want to be around other multifamily investors that can help you scale your portfolio today and grow your network, make sure you're a part of the Apartment Investing Mastermind. Just go to casmancapital.com and click on the Mastermind button today. Now, Jeff Greenberg is the CEO and managing member of Synergetic Investment Group. For over 12 years, he has managed all aspects of commercial real estate ownership, including acquisitions, investor relations, operations, value-add implementation, and dispositions. Now, through the SIG Wealth Fund, a diversified and customizable equity fund, SIG provides the opportunity for high net worth individuals to passively invest in commercial real estate. Let's welcome to the show, Jeff Greenberg.
Hey, it's great being here, John. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, Jeff. Great to have you on the show and to connect with you again. I went over your bio at a very high level. Why don't you take 2 minutes and fill in some of those gaps?
Well, I started out in the commercial space with the multifamily and student housing. Been the main GP on projects throughout that time, partnered up with many different partners, and then started heading towards the more into the investor relationships and the equity. And we can talk more about that, why I went into the equity funds, but had properties, Texas, Ohio, Georgia, Arizona. I think that was about enough.
Yeah, man. I love it.
Yeah.
We definitely want to talk more about kind of that process because, when we had you on the show last, it was definitely a while back. This was early on in the show back to 2018. To give you context, it was episode 57, right? So single or double digits there. Student housing investments versus multifamily. So check that out with Jeff Greenberg there, and we'll make sure we put a link to that in our show notes. But you were focused on student housing at that time, and I'm curious to hear kind of how your investing strategy has evolved in the 5 years since we had you on the show last.
Well, I still like student housing, and that's just one part of multifamily. I still like multifamily as well, but it was more of going out of operations, more into the equity side of it is what kind of made my change. But I think student housing at the right property in the right areas, phenomenal opportunities.
Yeah, I love that. And we'll make sure we link to that. You go into a great amount of detail about what you like about student housing, how to look at it. A lot of that is still, true today. But let's talk about that. You mentioned that you've done a lot. You did everything from acquisitions to operations, being an asset manager, raising capital, and you decided that, hey, the focus now moving forward is really on the equity and raising capital and working with investors. What led you to focus on that and walk away from more of that hands-on operational component?
Well, first of all, that wasn't my comfort zone. As far as being the asset manager and being the main guy, the operations, I wasn't, that wasn't exciting me. The last property we purchased, 225 units in Amarillo, I brought on a lady to be my asset manager, and she didn't want to be an employee, so we brought her on part of the GP team. So she became part of our team. And watching her perform on that difficult property and what she went through and what she accomplished kind of pushed me over the edge. And I thought, all I want to do is to work with people like her, people that did so much for the property, that worked so hard with the property management company, with ownership, and made something perform, beyond our beliefs. And I just need to find more people like that in the multifamily, as well as I'm looking other asset types as well. But I need those kind of people to invest with and let them do their thing, and I'll just help them along the way.
Jeff, I think that's a very astute and almost mature response. And what I mean by that is to say, I think so many investors assume they got to be the main person, right? You've got to do the work, you got to find the deal, you got to be the operator. And to recognize that even though you were kind of that lead, you recognize that, hey, you know what? There are people who enjoy and actually really good at managing the asset, instead of me trying to do it all myself, or, being kind of in that lead position doing that. Why don't we find more people like this asset manager and partner with them? Did you have any, I guess, conflicts internally or with your business to say, hey, am I comfortable stepping back? And I'm assuming that maybe the equity split changed a little bit, but I guess walk me through kind of the process there mentally to say, okay, hey, I want to make this change. And then what did that change actually look like?
Well, there certainly is that conflict of giving up the control, but I'm not a control freak. I would much rather delegate. I would much rather allow people to do what they're good at. And so the key is finding those people that are good at what they're doing, certainly better than me in certain areas, and work with them. And that was the key. And on the equity splits part of it, it was more of, if I was doing my own deals, I wasn't getting a lot of deals. We were evaluating tons of deals, but you know how difficult it's been the last few years on finding deals. And I figured, if I go into the equity business, if I go into the fund, I need to find those people that are good at finding the deals. So now I don't have to go and find those deals. I don't have to evaluate 100 deals to make an offer on 10 to maybe get one. I need to find those people that already found that one. And now I only have to underwrite that one along with them. Obviously, I'm vetting them. I would need to be comfortable with them, but I need to look at their deal and I could underwrite and evaluate it. That's a lot less work that I have to do. Now, as far as the equity, yes, I'm going to get less profit for myself on each deal. But then again, look how many more deals I can get involved with. I could get involved with a lot more sponsors and be involved with more deals. So,
Yeah, I think
it works out.
I think it's a good way of thinking about it and just looking at the whole picture. One, we always talk about it, but real estate, particularly in commercial real estate, it's a team sport. And if you're willing to be a part of that team as opposed to the star of the team, you can find more ways to contribute and to find success for you and your business. And I like what you talked about as far as being able to, identify who these people are, basically finding the right operators, underwriting the deal yourself, not having to look at 100 deals yourself, but just find the one that they've already found and make sure it's a fit, and building that way. And then also that part about delegating. If you can delegate that responsibility to someone who is capable, it's going to make your life a little bit easier. Then you can focus on the areas that you actually enjoy. Can we talk about kind of what you're looking for? I think finding that good operator, finding that great asset manager, it sounds great, in theory and on paper, but do you have kind of a checklist, or what's your process to kind of qualify some of these potential partners?
Well, we talk a lot about track record, but, anybody that's been in this business for, the last 10 years, they could have thrown the dart anywhere at the dartboard and made home runs. So it's more than just how much in the way of returns they've brought to investors. I want to see a little bit more about what they did to the deal, what they did to get there, and how much of it, was due to market conditions and not to their actual skills. I want to know where they had problems. I want to know, what problems did they have? What they did to solve those problems. If somebody's in the business and said, "Oh, we never had any issues, we never had any problems," then they're lying out of their, the side of their mouth, because we all know there's issues. But I want to know more about that. But it's also a personal thing. I need to feel good about communications with them. I want to know what kind of communications they provide to their investors. It's a lot about their business, their model. I want to know who's on their team. I want to know who is that asset manager. That's a key position. The person working with property management. Those are all key players that I want to get to meet. I want to talk to. Hopefully I could go meet them in person. I'll go out to their office, get to know them. Most of the people I'm investing with right now, in fact, all of the people that I'm investing in right now, I've met through some meetings, or I've been on masterminds with several of them. So I've gotten to know them personally. And as we were talking about earlier, I was able to press the flesh and actually sit down and talk to them and get to know them. And to me, I want to look in their eyes and really know who they are.
Yeah, and I think the thing that's really important from that standpoint is, when you're in the position that you're in right now with your fund, is your investors are trusting you to identify these operators. So you're going through that process of vetting them, and you want to sit down with them, get to know them, understand who they are at their core. What are their values? What do they believe in? And I mean, the track record is important, but to your point, a lot of people have had success over the last 10 years based on market condition. We want to understand, how do they operate? What challenges did they face? How did they address those challenges? When they face those challenges, are they blaming, the contractor, or blaming this guy over here? Or are they making adjustments to their process? Are they taking some accountability, right? Who are you getting as that potential partner? And not so much just on what happened in the past, but you want to know, hey, am I partnering with the person who has the vision, has the ability, has the astuteness to go and navigate whatever the landscape's going to be moving forward? So sitting down and building those relationships makes a lot of sense, and you've obviously been able to do that. So you've got this private equity fund, but for some people, those just sounds like, words we hear and kind of thrown around, but maybe you're not familiar with exactly what a private equity fund is. So can you define what a private equity fund is and why people may consider investing in it?
Okay. First, I'll go over what a typical one is, and then we'll talk a little bit more about what mine is, because mine is somewhat different. Typically, you have different kinds of funds. Deal sponsors may create a fund just for their own deals. Okay, they may have a fund where they're raising money, and all of the deals that they're going to bring into the fund are deals that they're in charge of. Then you're going to find other funds that may be very narrow focused and specific to maybe a region, to a type of property, but it typically is going to be all within this certain criteria of what opportunities they're going to bring in. And on both of those two first funds, you're in everything that's in those funds, okay, which is good and bad. It's good because you get to diversify out amongst different properties. You get to spread out all of your investment. But the negative part is, if there's certain deals that you really don't like, you are in those anyway. So you are trusting either the fund manager or the deal sponsor to evaluate those funds. Now, my fund is customizable, which means that we bring in deals and our investors can decide whether or not they want to be in that particular deal. Now, what that does, it gives us a great amount of flexibility that we can bring in just about any alternative investment that we want. So we could bring in self-storage, mobile home park, multifamily, student housing, assisted living, any of our development, anything in there. And if our investors want to be in that, they can be in that particular deal. Now, that allows them to self-diversify, and some of these may be higher cash flow, some of these may be more capital appreciation, but the investors get to pick and choose which of those they want to be in. And the advantage that they get, first of all, they get 1K1 for all of this. They could be in 10 investments, they'll get 1K1. But they also get me out there looking for them for the deals and vetting the sponsors, where typically I get people contacting me and say, hey, how do I vet a sponsor? How do I find a good sponsor? How do I know that this is a good person to invest with? And so now by coming into our fund, not only am I finding those deals, but I'm vetting the sponsors. And so they get an extra layer of due diligence that they may not be qualified to do, to help them get into quality deals.
I think that's really important to understand that distinction, because we hear the word fund thrown around, and it could mean something different. And what you described was what is essentially a blind fund first, right? Where you're in every deal. If they go out and buy a new asset, your capital is distributed to that deal as well. So it gives you diversification, but you may not like or may not agree with some of the investing strategies of some of the deals that they're buying. What you're talking about is more customizable, where in your fund, someone can actually identify the specific property or the specific strategy and decide, yes, I want to be in this deal, but I don't want to be in that deal. And they can still go ahead and make that investment. And then from their standpoint, they get a lot of the benefits, which is 1K1, no matter how many deals you're invested in. So it provides a lot of those same benefits, but it gives them a little bit more control than a traditional blind fund. So when you talk to people, like, why do people invest in kind of your more customizable fund as opposed to either directly into deals with some of these operators or into more of a blind fund model?
Well, typically, they like the diversification, but they like the idea that somebody else is looking out for them, that somebody else is going to represent them if there's issues, if the communication's slow, if the distributions are slow, there's somebody else that's looking out for them. Now, some people may decide, nah, I don't want to do that. I'm going to go in by myself. I may go directly in. Now, there's not much of an advantage, because typically we're going to get returns for our investors equal to or better than if they went straight in, because we're coming in with a large check to the sponsor. And so we're negotiating terms. So our expenses pretty much are being covered by those negotiated terms. So if I come in with a $2 million check, I'm going to get much better terms than somebody coming in with a $50K check. And because of that, it's really not costing the investor anything, or maybe very little. And in some cases, some of the negotiations, we're able to actually get the investors a better deal than if they went straight in. So it depends on how well the negotiations go.
I think that's great to understand, right? There's the leverage that you have in the fund because of the amount of capital you're bringing to the table. And it's just like anything else, right? You buy in bulk, you can get a better price. You can negotiate and get better terms. And when you're bringing the amount of capital you're bringing into the deal, because it is through the fund, you're able to negotiate that and maybe get a better return model for those investors, as opposed to if they went in directly. So appreciate that context. I think that's really helpful for a lot of our listeners. You kind of you've taken a more non-traditional route. You used to be very hands-on, very active, leading everything. And most people are trying to go from being a passive investor to being active. Talk to me more about the opposite approach, which is being hands-on, being active, and actually making more of a transition to being more on the passive side.
Well, I've been on their path. I started out coming in, the first deal I did, I was a passive investor because I wanted to learn about the investments. I wanted to see what it looked like as an investor. And I learned quite a bit. Most of it was negative, I'm afraid. I learned what not to do, and how to communicate better with investors, and a few things like that. And then went directly into being the main GP. A lot of times you'll get new investors They'll come in as an LP. They'll find a way to be a resource to somebody that's more experienced than them, somebody that's doing this, and find a way to get in on the GP side. They may be just a minor player on the GP side, but at least you get the inside track. You get to see what's going on from the inside. You get to be in on all the meetings that LPs typically aren't in on. And from there, if you want to continue on and be the main GP, it's great. I've been there, I've done that. And I decide there's a lot of people out there that are a lot younger and have a lot more energy. And I've done that. It's time for me to enjoy myself.
I love it, man. I love it. So let's talk about different investing strategies, right? You've got some folks who are looking for maybe cash flow right now out of the gate. Some folks who are playing the longer game and are focused more on kind of the long-term returns. Talk to me more about cash flow versus appreciating kind of that investing strategy.
Well, I mean, we look at different assets with that in mind. Typically, we've seen multifamily. You don't see a lot of cash flow during the hold. Typically, your big bump is at the end. Nowadays, we don't have as much of the value add, so it may be a longer hold on deals. We used to tell people that, we probably could double your money in 5 years. Now maybe we're talking 7 years. There were deals that we doubled people's money in 3. There's other things out there. I know people that have invested in ATMs, which essentially are all cash flow. There is nothing at the end. At the end, you've got an old machine you throw out. So that's, but it is good as far as taxes, because you get to write all that off, all that purchase equipment in the beginning. There's other things like assisted living we're looking at, as a cash flow play. There's development. You're not going to see much cash flow at all for a while. It could be 2 years before you see any cash flow. But at the end, you're going to see your capital appreciation. So there's all different things, different strokes for different folks. Depends on what their needs are. Or maybe they want to put a little money in here, which has a better cash flow, a little money over there, for the appreciation. We're looking to bring in opportunities that, will satisfy all of those needs.
I love that answer. And it just shows that, there are a lot of different ways to make money, but you have to figure out what's most important to you, right? Are you looking for cash flow? Are you looking for long-term appreciation, and invest accordingly based on that? For someone listening who's maybe, very interested in getting into multifamily or just getting into real estate in general, they've got a full-time job, they're doing well. They're not looking to leave that right away, but trying to figure out, hey, what is the best way to build a portfolio in real estate, or what kind of assets should I be looking at? What advice would you give them?
Well, I love commercial real estate. So I know a lot of people start on the single family world. I dabbled a little bit in single family, but I really never bought anything. I think commercial real estate, because of the way you can add value to the property by increasing the NOI, the net operating income, is way above the single family route, especially if you already have a job. If you can go in as a passive investor, if you have enough to invest, that's a great way to go. If you want to learn the routes of being a syndicator, what we discussed earlier, with getting in, finding a way to be a resource to somebody that's doing it, whatever that may be. You may be able to make phone calls. Maybe you're out here in California, can get up early in the morning before you go to work and make phone calls out into Texas or Florida or something where you can help somebody out. Or maybe you're great with data. You could sit on a computer all day and help market research. There's so much you could do to work with somebody that's a few steps ahead of you that could use some help. And by doing that, get involved in the business. But you need to figure out what your resources are, what your strengths are that you can bring to somebody.
Jeff, for someone who is trying to figure out the next step, I know they can go to your website, obviously, and work with you. Go to synergeticig.com if you want to learn more about Jeff and his company. I know we talked about networking and getting in front of people and building relationships, but what advice would you give someone who says, hey, I'm interested in learning more about, being a passive investor? What should I do now?
Well, first of all, keep listening to this podcast because John's got some great insights. There's a lot of other great podcasts out there. There's some great books. And I know that was going to be one of our questions coming up. One book I do like is Brian Burke's book, A Hands-Off Investor. If you want to be an active investor or you want to be a passive investor, read the book. It's a great book that is focused on the passive investor, but as somebody that wants to be an active investor, there's a wealth of information in there. So educate, get educated, podcasts, Bigger Pockets. That's where we actually met, I think, is through Bigger Pockets. Great resources there, a lot of information. But the best way to reduce your risk is to read, educate yourself, get a bunch of information, but don't let analysis paralysis hold you back, but do get educated.
No, really good tips there, Jeff. If you want to learn more about Jeff and his company, Synergetic Investment Group, go to synergetic.ig.com. We're going to go to our round of insights. All right, Jeff, give me a failure or an apparent failure that set you up for later success.
Well, the first deal, I can't call it a failure, but the first deal that we did, we held for about 7 years and we barely made any money on it. Our investors did okay, but we could have been at McDonald's working for minimum wage and made more money than we did on that property. But it was because it was a 3-year-old property. It was 100% occupied. They were already billing back for utilities. We had no value add. We had no way of, the only thing we were figuring we're going to do is increase the rents. And that wasn't happening. We tried to build back on water, and that was fought by the tenants. And so that was, a 7-year seminar. Wasn't a failure, but it certainly, I'm glad we did it. We learned a hell of a lot, but certainly didn't make any money on it.
Give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for your business.
Well, first of all, my Google Calendar is my lifeline. But other than that, I use Active Campaign for my campaigns that go out. Those are, I guess, Zoom. Zoom is indispensable. So those are probably the 3 that I use the most.
Give me the book you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
Well, The Hands-Off Investor is the one that I think is the best for someone that wants to get into the commercial real estate business, especially multifamily. Brian does a great job of breaking things down in a digestible way. And, he's done a great job. You and I are both friends with Brian, and, he does a great job in that book.
Yeah, Brian is a wealth of information and knowledge, and I always love listening to Brian speak, and we'll make sure to put a link to that book in the show notes there. We've also done an episode with Brian, which we can link as well, but great information there. Give me a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals.
Every time, I guess every night before I go to bed, I go and make a list of what's going to be my priorities for the next day. Helps me wake up focused and ready to move on.
All right. Give me your number one insight for raising capital in a fund.
Well, raising capital on its own is just to get out there, to get people to know you. And that's either on the social media, on podcasts, going to different events. It's a lot of meeting people, getting the opportunity to meet people, and being true to yourself, being honest. I've never been a sales guy. I know you come from a marketing background. It's not, I've never come from that, but I just share my excitement about this business. And, as I'm doing now, It's a great business, has great opportunities, and I just share it with as many people as I can.
I love it, man. I love it. Jeff, let's lighten the mood. You are out there in California. I mean, what's your favorite place to grab a bite to eat?
Favorite place to grab a bite to eat? I don't. Let's see. Where do I go? I don't know, John. You got me stumped on that one. I don't go out to get bites to eat so much. My daughter-in-law is a great cook, and most of the time I'm eating her meals.
There you go. All right, man. Those home cooked meals always do it, man. So we'll make sure we understand that. So don't try to invite yourself to Jeff's house, man, for a meal. All right. But Jeff, I appreciate the information you shared today. Just, listening to kind of your story. And again, I advise people to check out that previous episode 57, where you talk about student housing versus multifamily. But you talked today about, kind of why you decided to step back, still helping investors invest in real estate, but doing so more as kind of this fund and driving this fund model, as opposed to being kind of that, operational lead, where now you can focus on finding the right operators who can deliver results and returns for your investing partners. What to look for with these investors, asking the right questions, making sure that you're identifying the right deals and opportunities, but then also how to grow your portfolio and why a fund makes sense for the model that you have there. Again, if you want to learn more about, this fund and just more about what Jeff has going on, you can check out Synergetic Investment Group at synergetic.ig.com. Jeff, I want to thank you again for coming on the show today. It's been great talking to you, and I hope you have a good one. Take care.
All right. Thank you, John.